Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jamie and today I'm going to be doing a book review slash just discussion of Babel by R.F. Kuang. I know the dust cover got ripped. My cat ripped it. It's because he's racist. It's my fault. I didn't raise him right. First of all, I want to give a little of an apology for being MIA and not being able to upload a video. I know I don't really have a big following and nobody really expects me to have a consistent schedule, but I do really enjoy making these videos and it's really fun as a hobby for me to just enjoy and read a book and then tell the internet my thoughts about it. And I'm just more disappointed in myself for not being able to get a video uploaded in the last month. It's been really busy at work, and so I've been just emotionally exhausted getting home. I just kind of want to be on TikTok and waste the evening away, and then if I'm not really exhausted, I kind of want to take advantage of that energy and be super productive in writing my own book. And so I haven't had a lot of time to read. Hopefully I can be a little more proactive with the videos, but I don't know. It's not a big deal. So I feel like Babel was included in a lot of subscription boxes or book of the month things, and so a lot of book talk creators on TikTok received it at the same time, or they got arcs or whatever at the same time. And so it had a big hype earlier this year where everyone was like, oh my god, it's amazing, you have to read it, oh my god, you have to see it. And so you couldn't go a day without hearing somebody recommend Babel, and then that hype kind of died down once the next great book occurred or the next book talk scandal happened. And so this isn't a book talk book where it has continued hype like Colleen Hoover or Sarah J. Maas, but I still think the people who recommended it and said it was amazing have a reason to recommend it, that it is a very good book. And so I'm going to be talking about it. I was very excited by the premise, and it sounded like it was going to be a book that I would enjoy, specifically dark academia, language, interesting magical politics. It sounded really cool. So I read it and I have really enjoyed it. So this is my review slash recommendation slash thoughts video on it. If you have not heard of Babel, An Arcane History by R.F. Kuang, the general logline is that this is a dark academia novel about an alternate universe Britain in which the city is powered by magical silver bars, and these bars, the magic comes from translating foreign words into English, and whatever is lost in that translation is what powers the bar, what the bar is supposed to do. This book follows a young Chinese man throughout his life after he was taken from Canton and educated in British society to become a translation student and eventually help power these bars and serve the British Empire. It's set in the 1830s, 1840s, so end of, the Georgian reign, enters the Victorian reign, that time period wise. I would say the obvious comparison for this book and other dark academia books would be The Secret History, mainly because they are both about pretentious colleges and they have a basis in language. This one obviously through foreign language and translation and etymology. The Secret History is about classic languages, so there's always a Greek or a Latin phrase thrown in there all over the place. But I think that's where the comparisons stop. The Secret History by Donna Tartt is a satire where she kind of just points out that academia and privilege is a little fucked up by, having her characters do fucked up things. Well, Babel sits you down and has a conversation with you about how academia is racist and classist and has been used historically to justify imperialism, and how that is so fucked up and everything about it is fucked up and we need to change the system. And so I think this is a superior novel in themes than The Secret History. Kuang does an amazing job of discussing and explaining such huge and heavy themes without it being overwhelming. So she's able to kind of break down how racism and capitalism created imperialism and how academia justifies imperialism, and then breaks down how all of these things affect everybody and everything in the world. But it's not choppy, and it's also not overwhelming. She does a really great job of explaining why it's bad and how it leads into other issues and whatnot. And so I found this very easy to follow. I have also been like in these conversations before, watching video essays, reading about these kind of themes before, so maybe it was just easier for me to read because I was cognizant of these situations and these social issues. Kuang does a wonderful job of going in depth in it, and the character of Letty is kind of like the white audience insert, and so multiple times characters have to like explain to her what the problems with these issues are. And so I think she uses Letty as a way to like explain to the audience if they are unable to grasp these concepts already. Speaking of Letty, I love how specifically Robin and Letty's characters were so dynamic. I think they were wonderful foils for each other. I love how Robin is allowed to not be perfect, and he's allowed to kind of turn away from these social issues that he's seeing and just kind of turn a blind eye and want to believe that the institution and the academy that he loves isn't bad. And so it really adds to his story that he didn't just immediately be like, oh yeah, the system is fucked, I'm gonna start a revolution. Like, he was allowed to build up a wall against the social issues and then have to break it down himself rather than just immediately going, I know this is a bad system, let me help fix it. He was like, I can see how this is a bad system, but I don't really want to be a part of this right now. The system is helping me. And then he's like, well, no, the system isn't helping me, and it's hurting a lot more people. So even if I'm benefiting from it, I cannot, in good faith, justify this. It made his story more complete and dynamic, that he had to be more introspective about things. In the same vein, Letty was very dynamic. I found her the most relatable. Obviously, I'm a white woman in a socially liberal environment trying to be in these discussions. Not only do I see Letty in like the hundreds of white women I've met who are like, well, I'm a woman, so I face the same amount of oppression as other women of color, and like race isn't an issue. We both are women, we both get harassed. And it's like, well, no, women of color have a lot more other issues that you will literally never face. And then there's also the idea of classism, because Letty comes from like, she was like born into a high class, and so even though she's cut off from her father, she was raised like privileged, and so she's like, no, I'm not privileged, like I'm a woman in this society that doesn't value women, so like we face the same amount of issues, right? And like it's like, no, Letty, you don't. And I think Letty is a great foil for Robin because she represents like the issues he's seeing in the academy, where she is so ignorant on these issues, but because she is his friend and she is a nice person to him, he kind of ignores it and is like, okay, I'll let these issues slide. I'll let these ignorant things she's saying slide. I also like that Letty had this moment where she was like, oh my God, you guys do face, a lot more issues than I do. I can't believe I never saw this before. Like, you think they've finally gotten through to her, and there's this beautiful line. Wait, what's the quote? Hold on. I wonder if I can just find the quote. The fact that after everything they had told Letty, all the pain they had shared, she was the one who needed to be comforted. If that is not the epitome of white guilt, oh my God, that was just such a like moment for me, light bulb. Oh my God. Ugh. It's like looking in a mirror. Letty as a character was very impactful for me because I myself have said many ignorant and even racist things, and my friends will just let it slide because they cannot always be the educator. I have tried, and I hope I will continue to try to always educate myself and learn from my mistakes and the past things I've said and done. So I completely understand Robin, Rami, and Victoire's like frustration with Letty and how her character arc just kind of like goes whoa. That's why I think Letty is a great foil for Robin, and I think those two had the most dynamic character arcs for me. Overall, this is like a themes book rather than a character or plot driven book. I think the message is very well explained, and I think it's a very important discussion to have, not even to have, to just accept. Like I think we're done having a discussion. We just need to like understand that these horrible atrocities have happened in our past and we need to do better. But I understand it's still a discussion. Now, for how the book was like written, the message, the themes, all beautifully done. The characters, I loved it. The book did drag a little bit. There are two main spots where I felt like the story kind of just dragged out. One of them, I understand the artistic intent of why it dragged. During the strike towards the end of the book, every day is explained in minutia, and I understand it's dragging because it's supposed to like be slow and kind of go day by day explaining how the strike did or did not affect the British Empire. But the other part in the middle, like from their second to just the beginning of their fourth year, that whole section like so dragged for me. Like it was just repetitive. Hanging out with the cohort was great, and then we had a fight, and then we were made up, and then we had a fight, and then a racist thing happened and Letty was like, that's not racist, and Rami's like, yes it was racist, and then we had to fight, and then we all made up and we hung out again, and then we had exams, and it was like, can we move? I feel like some of that could have been reduced, some of it completely cut out altogether. We wouldn't have missed anything. So it took me 22 days to get through this book, according to Storygraph, because I started reading, I loved it, and then I hit a reading slump because it was just so difficult to get through that section. And then I had like 100 pages left, and that 100 pages was just like every day of the strike where like only little things happen, and it's like, it was a little bit boring. I'm sorry, it was boring. The good parts of this book make up for the fact that it was a little bit boring and dragged. And the very exciting parts of this book like were very exciting. Like I don't think this was the fault of the author not being able to pace the book out or have exciting things. I just think it was meant to have a boring section, and I didn't like the boring section. I'm sorry. That's all I have to say. I do think some of the characters fell a little flat, and I'm sorry to criticize this book, but I do think that Rami and Victoire in particular were very flat. This is not a character-driven book. It's a themes-driven book, so I understand that there weren't a lot of like character moments. Robin was the only one that needed to have those introspective, like long drawn out character examinations. But with how dynamic Robin and Letty's characters were, I was a little disappointed with Rami and Victoire. Like I said before, all of the character interactions, especially in the middle, were very repetitive, and so it would be the cohort is hanging out, and then Rami and Letty were fighting about, the different sides of the British Empire, and Letty would say something ignorant and racist, and Rami would have a snappy comeback, and then they wouldn't talk, and then Victoire would be like, guys, don't fight. And that was literally it. Rami and Victoire really didn't have a character arc. Rami is Robin's best friend, and he has this like snappy, witty comeback, and he's very staunchly against the British Empire, and Victoire is there. I didn't see much of a character arc with either of them, and so they kind of fell super flat, especially with how important they are said to be in Robin's life. Specifically, Rami is supposed to be like Robin's best friend, and he's supposed to be really influential in Robin's life, and he does kind of call Robin out on things, but he's not really like, he's not a confidant, he's not a foil. I don't really know what role he plays in this story. Victoire, I think, does kind of make up for it towards the end. Her monologue at the end, before the whole tower, that was beautiful. And it kind of did give me a satisfying end. Not the epilogue, but her monologue did give me a satisfying end to her story arc and kind of explained her situation. But Rami did not have like a redeeming scene where his character finally made sense to me and became more dynamic than I thought. He kind of was just flat throughout the whole thing. The ending was an absolutely heartbreakingly 10 out of 10. It was beautiful. Beautiful ending. Would not change anything. It's one of those things where it's like beautifully unsatisfying because it's not like a happy ending, but it's like narratively, you know, like that is just how it's supposed to end, and you're like, oh, but I wanted them to be all happy and live together and be friends forever, but they're not, because they just can't be, because that's just the way the story goes. And you're like, oh my god, specifically with Robin's real name, oh my god, I was screaming at the page. I was so invested. In the end, I loved it. It was beautiful. It was beautiful and heartbreaking, and I loved it. If I had to critique this book, I'd say the boring parts needed to be less boring. Sorry. I'm going to be mean about that. And then also, I know this isn't up to Kuang, and like this is a formatting issue with printing or whatever, but the asterisks needed to be bigger, because if you're not familiar, the book, it's written like a narrative thing, but it has footnotes, and a lot of times those footnotes would be used to contextualize a reference, or to explain how like a historical figure used academia to justify racism or imperialism or something like that. The footnotes were very interesting, but a lot of times I would get down to the end of the page, there'd be a footnote, and I couldn't find the asterisks. Had completely missed it, and it took me like a second to go find what the footnote was in reference to. So if the asterisks could just be a little bit bigger, the other ones, you know how they can't always have an asterisk, so it's like an asterisk and then like a cross and like an X or whatever. The other ones I could find completely, but the asterisks were just too little, looked too much like an apostrophe or a quotation, so like I couldn't see them very often. So I'd say make the asterisks bigger in the next print. That's just like my 2 cents. All in all, I think R.F. Kuang is an amazing author, and I'm definitely going to read The Poppy Wars. I saw The Poppy Wars get really big on Book Talk like a couple of years ago, and I was like, oh, it's just another fantasy romance that everyone likes, and it's going to be the same old. But after reading Babel, I really, really like R.F. Kuang's writing style, and I want to see her in like an actual fantasy setting without the historical references. Excuse me. And I know her new book, Yellowface, is coming out soon, or at least the arcs are coming out soon. So I really do want to read Yellowface when it comes out, because I want to see what else she has to say. And like, I also wanted to see her writing a contemporary book. And I hope that Babel becomes like a modern classic. I hope it's on like the same level of Hunger Games, where it's very important and where it's very important people keep revisiting it and keep dissecting and understanding it. I think Babel will become like a modern classic. Alrighty, that was my review of Babel by R.F. Kuang. I'm gonna tape this or something, make it look nicer. If you've ever read Babel, tell me what your thoughts are. If you've read her other works, please tell me what your thoughts are and what you recommend. I think she only has The Poppy War and Yellowface coming out, but she might have other stuff, I don't know. If you liked my video, please like and subscribe. If you have any recommendations for other books, please put them down in the comments below, and hopefully I will be posting more regularly. I'm so sorry I took like a month off. Again, nobody expects me to have like a regular posting schedule, but I expect me to have a posting schedule. So okay, bye. It's so cold. Why did I let it sit out?